Excellent. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining. You see the topic of our discussion on the screen here today. So, just to let the audience know that we're going to be discussing how to embrace low-code, no-code technology to drive innovation in today's world. So, obviously, we at Creatio are firm believers in this, but that's why we've brought some great minds together so we can discuss that and have a good roundtable on how we feel that low code is going to help to drive that innovation. So to get things started, guys, I have a list of topics here that we would like to kind of cover off, and the first one I'll direct towards Alan, because I think this touched on his presentation a little bit yesterday. So Alan, if we're looking at innovation, what are the main drivers of innovations, and what are the challenges that are surrounding innovations? And then guys, feel free to chime in as we go along here as well.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks, Eric. I think the first thing I have to say is that those are two really big questions, and the answers might take up the whole of this session. So I'll try not to do that. The drivers, as I see it, the drivers to innovation are survival. Really, it's the continuing success of an organization, and for lots of organizations, that drive for innovation will be the ever improving customer experience that they can deliver. So if an organization can continually innovate, continually improve the way the customer experience is delivered, that will give them the competitive advantage that attracted customers to them in the first place, allow them to improve customer loyalty, reduce churn, improve customer retention, but perhaps equally importantly, innovation can drive employee loyalty. And in today's marketplace, and this is something that we touched on yesterday, Eric, in today's marketplace, talent is short in many areas of employment for many businesses. And trying to find people with the right skills is not easy. And in some areas of IT and data science, which are very important skills to have in organizations these days, those people can be very expensive. So if you can innovate in such a way that the business is always exciting, it's got vibrancy, then employee loyalty is improved, and you remove some of that churn. Another thing that results from improving the customer experience, improving customer loyalty, retention, and improving employee retention is that it improves the impact. You get a positive impact for the stakeholders in the business. And by stakeholders, I mean the whole spectrum of not just investors, but everybody that in some way has a connection with the business. If the business is doing well, if it's continually innovating, improving its standing in the market, then the whole supply chain into that business gets a positive advantage out of it. Often businesses these days are trying to have a social impact in some way with green policies, with corporate social responsibility, and companies that innovate and stay vibrant contribute better into those social environments. So I think the drivers for innovation are diverse, and what innovation looks like from one organization to another will vary widely. But I think if you focus on improving the customer experience, everything else kind of ripples out from that. Now, the second part of your question was what are the challenges to that, and inevitably it will be the climate that you create in your organization to allow innovation to emerge. The boardroom does not have an exclusive hold on innovation. Innovation can come from any part of your organization. It might even come from outside your organization, where your customers or suppliers spot things that you could be doing better, more effectively. And because they care about the relationship they have with you, then they share these things with you, and you can innovate based on that external input. So I think time and awareness are important. You have to give people the time. We have a full-time marketing executive at Collier Pickard who's only charged with doing his job as a marketing operative for 80% of his time, 4 days a week. He's given free rein to spend 20% of his time just exploring the internet, looking at research, thinking about new ways of using social media, thinking about ways of improving our customer experience as a CRM company. And the company allows him the latitude of using that time to just roam and think and discuss with colleagues. And that's what I would call an innovative culture. It's one that's done us well. And I think if you combine together this driver of improving customer experience and try to take the challenge of having a innovative culture head on by giving people the time and the latitude to go out and think and be free range, then you can create a culture that will lead to your continued success as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Brian, I know that you have a lot of these types of conversations surrounding innovations. What are you seeing from your customers as challenges? What are their top challenges?
We do, and I thank you for giving me the easier of the two questions, because I think the challenges are typically, this is an old term, maybe I'm aging myself, but people don't like their cheese moved. People like things the way they are, and innovation almost always is change. Really, it is always change, and usually it's change. If it's good innovation, is going to be semi-drastic change. It's going to be, we know these are the 20 steps that we used to do it, but if we do this one thing different, we can make it 2 steps, but it's going to be drastically different, and it's going to be less people-driven, which sometimes that is frightening. So you get a lot of pushback from people that go, I've done this for 30 years this way, it works, I'm not doing anything different. Or I'm afraid that it's changing my job and I'm not going to be necessary anymore. And so getting people into that, seeing some success, and to Alan's point, giving them some freedom. Typically most customers we run into, everybody's doing more than a full-time job, at least it feels like, or they believe they are. And to ask them to take 5%, 10% of their day, even to work just on rolling out a new project, becomes a challenge. So I think those two things, I think people seeing change is scary. I think that's always a little frightening. And then also people getting enough leeway from executive or from leadership to be allowed to figure out what's the best new process. We, as part of what we do, is guide in that, but sometimes it's, a lot of times, we just had this conversation, Scott and I, the other day. Somebody says, oh, tell me what you did with 3 other companies just like us, because that's what we want to do. And that's very rarely accurate or feasible. It's like, what you do is different. Unless you're running a McDonald's or something like that, what you do is different than what your competitor does, even if they're very similar. So it's always driving, what are you trying to accomplish? How do we want to get there? And then let us show you or talk to you about some of the best ways we've seen it done many other places. That's a great way to innovate. But that's what I see as one of the bigger challenges, or the 2 biggest challenges we run into: fear of change and time or leeway to actually make that kind of change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great couple of points, Brian. And I want to get Tolga's opinion on this as well, but I'd also like to bring the audience into this a little bit. Let's run a poll and ask the question: what are the main challenges surrounding innovations in your company? So while the audience are responding to that, Tolga, I know you've got an opinion on this as well. So what do you feel are challenges, but maybe also what are drivers that you're seeing out there?
I think innovation requires a change, and Alan and Brian also mentioned it very in a good way. What I experience here in Turkey, in most of the cases, are the environment where innovation is required is also very important. Even in the organization and around the organization, the people who are given tasks to innovate something, a process or a product or a platform or an idea, it depends on the environment that they are working on and living in. This is also about the organization, inside the type of the organization that they are working. In some cases, we are facing some expectation based on the time limits of the working hours, depending on limiting their times, depending on when to innovate or how to innovate in some companies in our country. And this is becoming some kind of not good for the new generations who are very open to change and very open to innovate something in their field. This is how we face in our country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm thinking that the audience is agreeing surrounding this as well. So I got the results of this poll back, and it's interesting to see. 45.5% said they're missing an innovation strategy. 36.4% said there's lack of collaboration, and in third place we have missed customer connection. Right. So to your point earlier, guys, not being able to have those customers identify, right, for you, right? We don't have that connection telling us what we can do better and understanding that. So, Alan, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that one. So, when we look at innovation and we look at the challenges, the drivers, I would as the biggest innovation trends that we're seeing in 2021, right? Obviously 2020 we had to innovate quite rapidly, but what are we seeing coming into to 2021? We can start with Brian on this one.
I think to Tolga's to a point, I think younger workforce, with that workforce coming in, they are much more flexible. Opposite to my point earlier, what we see sometimes with the people that don't like change, they almost expect change. So I think we're seeing more of that. I think also because there's kind of this big, everybody taking a little bit of a breath. I think we're seeing some rapid growth in business and maybe some projects that have been on hold. And I think this is a common thing that's just happened year over year with technology growth. And change every year seems like it doubles. I think we're still seeing that with AI getting a little stronger, connectivity growing every day, right? Everything's connectivity, high speed access almost everywhere, at least in main areas, and growing out even in the outskirts of areas. I think you're starting to see those types of things proliferate even faster than they had before, and I think they're just going to keep going that way.
Mm-hmm. Great points, Alan. What do you think? What are you seeing as the biggest trends?
I think that Brian's point is right. I think that people across the organisation are having more influence on ways that things could improve. So, like I said in my answer to your first question, the boardroom doesn't have a monopoly on innovation, and I think that's the trend, because you look back into the 20th century, and that might well have been the case. The idea of the suggestion box that would be on the wall in the office that never had any tickets put in it because people were afraid to put their head above the parapet. And that's kind of gone now. I think people are able to speak up. They feel empowered to speak up, and I think that drives change in its own right. The very fact that the people who are dealing with customers, dealing with supply chains, dealing with the day-to-day problems, they're the ones who come up with the solutions because they're trying to make their own lives more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's it's a good point. And if we're not in today's world, if we're not innovating, we're going to fall behind. We may die, right? Like I think we need to drive innovations, throughout our organization. I know in Boston, where I'm from, we have these innovation hubs, right, where local businesses are contributing to these innovation hubs to, maybe it's a selfish purpose. Maybe they're interested in purchasing that technology down the road or acquiring it somehow. But, driving innovations is really, something that a lot of big organizations are focusing on and fueling that innovation throughout different markets. Tolga, what are you seeing as trends with your customers?
In our environment, I think the request for using data is getting very important, and any process or any new idea based on this data is helping companies to change the way they operate or they change the way they understand. And after COVID, most of the companies are struggling to understand the experience of the customers, the expectations of the customers, because all the old norms are changed right now. We have to rebuild our strategies in some cases, especially the customer experience and the employee experience part. And during this, there are some accelerators like the use of AI. In some cases, we are calling AI use cases, and it brings the use of data within this AI approach and creating some kind of very different solutions for today's problems of understanding. And also, in some cases, we see that the drivers inside these type of use cases helps companies to understand their employee expectations and the use of the processes inside the organization. So there is a mix between these things, I believe. In our organization, we have an AI lab, and there we see that there are some untouched areas where data is not collected and where data is not used. We have a case for that, for using the data inside psychology, for example. We've seen that in today's example, the data is not used in any process. So we are trying to look what is happening inside, for example, and try to understand how we can make any further steps during this process of the psychologists. And lots of points are coming into the minds of our colleagues and the minds of our collaborators in the project. So it's a common understanding of what can be done in this new area, I believe.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to again poll the audience on a couple of different things, because there's been some studies out there. So Bloomberg is doing its annual ranking of the world's 50 most innovative countries. So I'd like to ask the audience, which country do you think was #1 in 2020? And while we're waiting for those results to come in, I think if we were to poll the panel here, we'd have 3 different answers, right? But we'll leave it to the audience, guys. So while we're waiting on the answer for that, what another question that I would I would have, so we're talking about innovation trends. And what I would think is, how do you feel that, low-code and no-code technology can help drive innovations as well, right? So we know all of the different trends. We see low-code, no-code as being a way to innovate rapidly. We saw in a previous presentation that, by 2030, low-code, no-code is going to be a $187 billion industry, right? That's what it's anticipated at. So we'd love to hear your opinion on how low-code is going to help low-code, no-code, I should say, drive innovations in Alan, do you have a thought on that? I'm trying to go round robin. I'm making sure I'm going either clockwise or counterclockwise on the screen here.
So Eric, who did you direct the question to? Sorry.
Oh yeah, to you, Alan. I was going to address the question to you first.
Okay. So I think low code, no code. It actually becomes an enabler of rapid innovation. For all of my working career, over the last 4 decades, IT has been a bottleneck on introducing change. More and more workplace is based on the way that it handles digital information, and if your IT department is a bottleneck, then everything is dictated by the pace with which they can manage projects which are thrown at them. And the priorities that are set by the senior management. So if low code and no code push the ability to deliver innovation out, take the workload off the IT department and spread it out to the operational units of the business who had the idea to innovate in the first place, and they can run prototyping. You come into some governance questions here about whether the user department that's handling the low-code development has total responsibility for the governance of the deployment of this system, or whether they have shared governance with the IT department, or whether the centralized IT people and the CIO and the digital management team, whether they have overall governance. That's something that's going to vary from one company to another. But if you push at least the prototyping and concept to minimum viable product, if you can push at least that much out, then you're going to rapidly decrease the time it takes to get these things out and into function, and therefore reduce the time that it takes to have a positive impact on the customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's something that, I talk to customers about daily, right? It's that time to value. Innovations, have to be driven by the benefit that they're going to have for the organization. And the quicker that you can recognize those benefits, the more palatable it is for the business or the organization to drive those innovations. So absolutely. Tolga, what are your thoughts? What do you think is low code can bring to innovation strategies?
I totally agree with Alan about it reduces the time to the market about any type of process or any type of product that you are working on. Besides it, I think it brings freedom to business users because they are the ones who are dealing with the real tasks. They are in front of the customers. They are in charge of the operations. And I'm sure that they are hiding half of their thoughts not to argue with some kind of the other organization departments inside the organization. Right now, they have freedom to try and they have freedom to understand how they can achieve an idea to a prototype. And then they can try with the good results or the bad results, but this is also important to get some results behind any idea. I think this is also important for innovation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Brian, you're back. I saw you dip out there for a second.
Yeah.
I was worried.
I think the time at which it can be done, I think is the key, because the rate things are going right now, if you had to wait, some of the reason innovation is hard in a non-low code, no code environment is if you had to wait to go through a normal development process for, say, an advanced routing algorithm or something for your company, by the time you get it done, there's a very high risk that it is no longer innovative. So the ability to try things, I think, also almost sprouts innovation on its own, because we can do something. Customers work with us a lot, where we used to do something, they'd call and say, okay, I'd like to try this, and it'd be a month, right, and a large project. And now it's like, let me give this over to a guy, and you can take a look at this early next week, and it'll take a couple of hours type thing. Or if they're doing it on their own, if they've got somebody that's got some business analyst skills or some design skills, they can try things without it being a burden on their time and their cost. Like we talked about it before, nobody has a ton of time. Everybody's already busy. So with low code, no code allows me to quickly try something. I can quickly either vet that that's interesting and works, and maybe talk to some other people about it, or no, I've now seen it doesn't work. So I think the ability to rapidly prototype and try things, or just be successful for something that's going to work, that's the simpler of the two. Is the quicker ROI, much easier. But the one of the more interesting things is we can more quickly try something, and that might spread out into something else that spreads out into something else that's very innovative, but took us a third of the time of a standard development cycle. So I think that's the biggest thing I see.
Excellent, excellent. So I have an update on our poll. So the polling question was, which country do you think is the most innovative in 2020? So we had a very close tie between Germany and the USA. But the correct answer, that is according to Bloomberg, is Germany. So Germany throughout 2020 was the most innovative country that was polled. So a lot of, and that's not atypical. A lot of German innovation has been prevalent throughout the years. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, I did not see USA on top like I thought Brian was going to say. And Tolga had Turkey, I'm sure. And Alan, we know where you stand. Excellent. So guys, this has been a great discussion on that. Now I'd like to possibly take a few questions from the audience and see if we can answer some of their thoughts as well. So a couple of things that came in that I found found interesting here is we have one comment that came in. It says COVID-19 became the main driver of innovation in my company. How do I encourage innovation in my organization beyond that now? Why, once we get past COVID-19, how do we keep that innovation spirit going? Anyone want to jump in, or
yeah,
there we go. Alan will take this one.
Okay. So a couple of years back, I had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Kellyanne Schmidt, who's a lecturer in applied psychology at Manchester Metropolitan University. And she was talking about the psychology of behavior change. And I think the answer to the question that's asked is, how do I encourage innovation on top of the innovation that came out of COVID? Mm-hmm. The answer to that is that you create a behavior change in people so that they're always looking for innovative opportunities. And to create that culture where you encourage people to change their behavior and think this way all the time, Dr. Schmidt was saying that the only way that behavior change will happen is if people are motivated to change their behavior in that direction. And as an organization, to motivate people, you have to give them two things. You have to give them capability, and you have to give them opportunity. And by that, she meant that in capability terms, you have to give them the tools to be able to make a change. So in this case, where we're talking about low code, it fits perfectly. If people have got the ability to experiment with low code, no code systems, try things out, see if they make sense, take them to MVP, and then engage people to look at how they scale with good governance to the whole organization, if you could give people the capability with a low-code system and access to the right data, that's half the story of creating the motivation for people to work this way. The second half was opportunity, and that links straight back to time, the point I made about the marketing executive at Collier Pickard. He's actually officially given 20% of his time to roam and think and explore. And if you can give people time, maybe not 20%, maybe that's extravagant in some organizations, but if you can give them time, then you've given them the physical opportunity, but you also need to give them the social opportunity. It has to be acceptable to do this, to spend time on things that might be seen as not productive in terms of profit generation today or delivering customer satisfaction today. It has to be socially acceptable within the organization to think that way. So the answer to the question, how do I encourage innovation, is you need to get people to change their behavior so that they think that way. And the only way you could get them to change is by motivating them, by giving them the capability and the opportunity, the time and the social acceptance to be able to work in that way and do that. And in that respect, I found Dr. Kellyanne Schmidt a very enlightening speaker.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we'll have to make her part of our panel sometime in the near future.
Yeah, well, I think she's from Chicago, so she'll fit right in with some of it.
Oh, perfect, perfect, excellent. All right, so we've got time for one last question, guys, and I'll throw it out as a jump ball between Brian and Tolga here. So, what KPIs do you use to track innovation? Like, how do we measure the effect of innovation? Anyone, go ahead. There it is. I throw it out there. One of you pick it up, please.
That's a tough one. I'm trying to think, is there a way to track it differently than that we track any other result? It's innovation should be tracked as a change in results, whatever you're trying to innovate. So, it depends on the innovation in all reality. Is the innovation going to change our customer satisfaction metrics? If so, do we have a good way to track that? Right. Is the innovation going to affect our ability to get product out the door? Again, we need a good way to track that. I think, probably to Alan's point a little bit, I think a lot of it is also, and a little different than the result side, is more based on culture. And can we track how many people are involved with innovation? I think that would probably be more interesting. And I think that's a tougher. I think some organizations already do that really well. If you're an organization that's been around a long time and hasn't innovated before, or that's not part of your normal strategy, I think that's a learning process. I think it comes into weekly meetings or a newsletter or some whiteboard innovation that's being worked on by teams of people and discussed. And just, are we getting anywhere? Are we finding things that work, or also things that don't work? That's still innovation. I think if you could metric that and just track who's involved, I think that's probably would be an interesting thing. A little more than my boring results answer.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, results is, I think when we look at KPIs, everything is, you got to create a baseline, right? That's the first thing. Decide what to track, create a baseline, innovate, and that's how you're going to measure, right? Measure the success of it. Here's where we were before, here's where we are after. And, I think that, results isn't a boring answer. That it's a good answer, right? And it ties back into our other presentation. Focus on the outcome, right? Let's focus on the outcome. Excellent. Well, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm sure the audience, appreciated the insights that you shared. I know that there are more questions in the chat. We'll do our best to try to answer those offline. But I wanted to thank you again for joining our session. And, I look forward to hopefully interacting in the next week or so with you guys again.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
All right.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.